Hello everyone. I'd like to welcome you all to the kickoff of the digital version of the Legal Innovation Conference. We would like to provide you with a quick introduction in German, French and English, and then continue with the keynote speech of Dr. Guenther Dobrauz in English. Liebe Kolleginnen und Kollegen, im Namen des 24-köpfigen Executive Board der Swisslegaltech Association heiße ich Sie ganz herzlich willkommen zur digitalen Ausgabe der Legal Innovation. Wie Sie sicherlich wissen, war geplant, dass wir diese Konferenz, diese zweitägige Konferenz in Bern physisch durchführen. Das war aber nicht möglich. Infolge der aktuellen Situation mit der Pandemie mussten wir schnell handeln und haben uns da für eine digitale Version entschieden. Was bedeutet das konkret? Wir werden heute in Echtzeit die Einführung und die Keynote-Rede von Guenther Dobrauz hören und auch aufzeichnen und die Aufzeichnung dann auf die Legal Innovation Website stellen zum kostenlosen Download. Während des Referats von Guenther Dobrauz können Sie gerne Fragen stellen. Bitte benutzen Sie hierzu die Chat-Funktion von Zoom. Wir werden die Fragen konsolidieren und bündeln und dann Guenther Dobrauz am Ende seines Referats zur Verfügung stellen, damit er die Fragen beantworten kann. Nun, in Bezug auf die anderen Referenten wollen wir wie folgt vorgehen. Wir werden diese Referenten kontaktieren und ihre Präsentationen aufnehmen und ebenfalls die Aufnahmen auf die Legal Innovation Website stellen zum kostenlosen Download. Es ist aber durchaus möglich, dass wir in dieser Phase, das heißt von heute bis Ende Juli 2021, Echtzeit Keynotes oder Panel-Diskussionen organisieren werden. Wir werden Sie natürlich über diese digitalen Aktivitäten stets informieren. Die Swisslegaltech Association möchte damit erreichen, dass unsere Kunden, Sie, aber auch das gesamte LegalTech-Ökosystem in einer doch schwierigen Zeit mit aktuellen und werthaltigen Informationen bedient werden kann. Im Namen der SLTA möchte ich mich ganz herzlich bedanken bei unseren strategischen Partnern, dem Schweizerischen Anwaltsverband und Swisslex, sowie unseren Sponsoren Coop Rechtsschutz und Swisslex. Ich möchte mich auch bedanken für Ihr großes Interesse an diesem Thema. Es freut uns riesig, dass wir heute so viele Teilnehmer dabei haben dürfen. Zu guter Letzt möchte ich den Referenten danken, die in der kürzesten Zeit diesen Strategiewechsel unterstützt haben. Nun möchte ich weitergeben zu einem der Vizepräsidenten der Swisslegaltech Association nach Genf, Guenther Dobrauz.
Merci beaucoup, Chris. Bienvenue à tout le monde. C'est un plaisir de vous souhaiter la bienvenue à la première édition de Legal Innovation. Nous avions prévu un événement physique à Berne, ce n'est que partie remise. Nous allons devoir nous contenter de Zoom, mais on ne peut pas vous demander de rester connecté sur Zoom pendant 3 jours. Donc, nous avons décidé de préenregistrer les présentations de nos speakers et de vous les mettre à disposition sur notre site LegalInnovation.ch et notre groupe LinkedIn. Vous aurez les coordonnées, les liens dans le chat. Ceux qui sont inscrits recevront bien sûr une notification. L'objectif de la SLTA avec cette conférence, c'est le partage de connaissances. Donc, nous aurons plus de 30 speakers qui vont aborder plusieurs sujets, toujours sur le thème de la modernisation du marché du droit. La présentation d'aujourd'hui du Dr Guenther Dobrauz sera enregistrée et mise à disposition. Si jamais vous avez des questions pendant cette présentation, vous pouvez les poser dans le chat. Nous allons essayer de les regrouper et nous aurons une session Q&A après la présentation pour en discuter. Merci beaucoup à nos partenaires et à nos sponsors, donc nos partenaires stratégiques, la Fédération suisse des avocats et Swisslex, et nos sponsors, Coop Protection juridique et Swisslex. Je remercie chaleureusement nos speakers qui ont accepté ce format digital et de partager leurs connaissances avec vous. Et on vous remercie enfin vous, chers participants, parce que vous avez été vraiment très nombreux à nous rejoindre. Donc, on vous souhaite une très bonne conférence et je passe maintenant la parole au Dr Michael Burkhardt pour l'anglais.
Yes, thank you, Nicola. Also, very warm welcome to this year's digital version of the Legal Innovation Conference from my side. My name is Michael. I'm one of the vice presidents of the Swiss Legal Tech Association, and I'm very happy to introduce you to this year's setup. Due to the today obvious reasons, we had to decide to move the former physical two-day conference from Bern to a digital version here on Zoom. It is my great pleasure to welcome you here on behalf of the Swiss Legal Tech Association. What does the Swiss Legal Tech Association want to achieve with this Legal Innovation series? Together with a broad range of experts, we want to ensure knowledge transfer in the Swiss legal technology market, and will try to compare current developments with nearby foreign market trends. In this year's edition, we will be recording all speaker sessions and will make them available on the Legal Innovation website for free. Let me finish with some housekeeping measures. Of course, these sessions shall be interactive, due to which we set up the Q&A function in Zoom. Please feel free to ask questions in the chat, which we then collect and try to answer in the Q&A part after the speech of Guenther. Lastly, we would like to sincerely thank our partners and sponsors. First of all, our strategic partner, the Swiss Bar Association, as well as Swisslex, the leading legal research platform in Switzerland. We would also like to gratefully thank our sponsor, Coop Rechtsschutz. With your support, this event series would not be possible. Of course, we would also like to sincerely thank all of you interested participants, and without you, it would not be fun here at all. And of course, we would also like to thank our amazing speakers. Now, I have the pleasure to introduce you our very first speaker, Dr. Guenther Dobrauz. Guenther is a partner with PwC. He is a leader of PwC Legal Switzerland and a member of PwC's global leadership team. He's also a lecturer at various universities. Prior to this, he was a successful venture capitalist, in-house counsel, and also practiced law before courts in an international law firm. Guenther is further an author of several books, and in particular, very passionate about innovation, entrepreneurship, and exponential technologies. With that, and without further ado, I hand over to Guenther and wish you all participants an interesting kickoff session. Guenther, the stage is yours.
Thank you very much, Michael. Thank you very much, Christoph, and also Nicola, of course. I'm really, really greatly honored to have been invited to give that speech today. And I must admit, I'm a little scared as well, because there's a lot of people here, and I see some of you on the micro screen, but I don't see you like really. And obviously I have to admit that I like to do that, but it's not my profession, it's not my job, and I don't do that every day. So all I can say is I hope that I won't mess it up too much, because as you know, in Switzerland they say if they don't say anything, it's better they would have said something. So I guess that in the feedback, I hope I'm getting also some feedback on the quality of that presentation and how we're doing that. And I ask you for that because obviously I want to get better at doing all of that. So I've prepared a little presentation of some 35 slides for you here, but don't be afraid of that. I think we will go through it rather quickly. And in essence, what I want to do is give you kind of an overview from starting with innovation, disruption, and dominant design. Look at the horizon of technology disruption, which is kind of right around us rather than in front of us these days, if you look at it. Then go into legal tech and look at its key drivers and barriers, and conclude by looking at options for law firms and those who want to remain profitable in this world out there. So all presentations I've basically listened to started with a quote, and usually it's by a Nobel Prize winner, at least 70 years dead. So you can't 100% check it or whatever. But I like this one, and it's actually from the webpage of the Burning Man Festival. And it says, the appropriate response to new technology is not to angrily retreat into your corner, hissing and gnashing your teeth. It's to ask, okay, how should we use this? And the reason I like that is in our working with especially legal tech companies as partners of our firm, you kind of end up in a space where you realize that people are in one of two courts. And the one is that they're thinking technology is going to be amazing and it's going to change everything, and it's going to take all our problems away. Or, and that's usually the lawyers in this case, and I'm not excluding myself, by the way, it's going to take everything away with robots. And one day there will be robots in the courtroom doing our job. Now, I don't believe that this is the solution, and I will be talking about that as we go through my presentation. I think the truth is kind of in the middle. It's technology plus people coming together and delivering something. And, you know, if I look back at my first day in a law firm where I wasn't even in the law firm, I was just working out there while I was at university. And I remember that there was a discussion about whether all lawyers should have an email address, right? This was 1999, I believe, right? That's not so long ago. And today, if you imagine that kind of idea, it's kind of strange because no lawyer would like to live without email. And a lot of those new ideas which are coming up are in that very sphere of email. They are basically technologies which overcome hurdles, which help us do things faster and better. And eventually we won't even know that they're around. So I believe that's kind of the image we should take when we think about legal tech. So what is it that we're talking about? Innovation, disruption, and dominant designs. And if I could have one wish, and that is that you take one thing home with you, it probably would be this second slide that comes after this, but also together with this one. And this is a kind of a breakdown of disruption, of innovation. And when you kind of look at it, or at least in my experience, I think most of the things we are seeing also in legal tech are right kind of in the orange corner. It's incremental innovation. It's nothing that changes the whole sphere, that takes away the lawyers, may take away some players, but not all of them. But that's kind of where most of the innovation is. I don't have statistics for it, to be honest, but my gut feeling is it's like 80%. I may be wrong, maybe it's a lot less or less more, but we've been playing with innovation in legal sense, I would say almost 10 years now, and that's kind of the feeling we're getting. And we're not just looking at Switzerland, we're looking at it globally. Now, apart from that, obviously the other parts are disruptive innovations on the right, which is more about technology. And on the very right or very left, I put some examples for you that give you an idea of what that could be. And in this case, I basically thought about Uber. There's a new technology, but it's kind of doing the old way or the old things, plus coupling it with some more. On the other hand, going up, there's architectural innovation, where in fact the business technology or the model is being changed with new technology. And here's an example. I used iTunes. And iTunes is basically, you know, when you think about music, there's somebody putting out music which they are putting together through a new kind of venue, right? It's streamings, it's downloads. And the really, really interesting part, which everybody is trying to kind of get to, that's radical innovation. That is new technology doing new business models. And I'm not sure if I'm 100% correct with this one, but I put there cryptocurrencies. That's new technology, new business models, everything new. So that's kind of the big picture. But again, just remember that being in the one or the other doesn't make it a lot better. It's just important that you know where you are and you make the best out of it. So before I said, if I could imagine one slide that I would hope that you would take home with you, then it would be this one. And it's actually a combination of two slides. And more or less everything I've ever known about this whole game basically kind of comes together in this one. And what it shows you is that on the below part, that's probably the part you know, that's the adoption of technology as you go through it, how different types of innovators are adopting a technology and how different kind of merits have to be shown so that they can adopt it. By the way, I'm not 100% sure if that was actually ever proven. I believe it was based on the bringing of wood in somewhere in America or whatever, but it kind of made sense if you think about it, how those things are being adopted. The one thing I'm really excited about here is the other one. It's the S-curve, and it's by a guy called Jim Utterback. And he's not a guy; he was a professor at MIT, and I got very lucky to listen to him speak and got his book, which today is a little difficult to get hold of, but I highly recommend it. Just leave aside the kind of examples he's giving, but the very gist of it is that the technology always develops in the shape of an S-curve. And the really important part is that right in the middle, there's the dominant design. Up until that dominant design emerges, there's thousands of players bringing their ideas to market. And once the dominant design is there, it's all being kind of swept up. This industry of 100 of 1,000 players is going to something like maybe 20, 30 players, or sometimes even less, as history has shown us. One other important point to make at this stage is that disruption, this word that is being used a lot when we talk about innovation, that is really this. It's a new technology starting and at some point overtaking the old technology. Now with this one, you just have to be careful because yes, this is what happens, but almost always does this kind of innovation come from outside of the established industry, and rarely ever does anybody from the old industry make it into the new industry. We're all talking about what has been given to us, what has been achieved, but we're not thinking about what has happened in between. But I can't think of a church bell provider who today is really big, right? I can think of a horse carriage producer who today would be producing cars, and I can think of a typewriter producer who today would be putting out laptops. So that's the kind of the nature of the disruption of innovation as it's being brought about. To kind of make that a little clearer, here I put together, or I actually didn't put it together, I found it on the internet, but it's kind of really showing how that is happening. And you may remember that, but the rise of digital camera started like end of the 90s-ish. And I remember when I got my little first, I believe it was an Ixos or something, I was really proud of it and how it went up all the way. But at the same time, a totally different kind of technology was starting out, and that was mobile phones. And I had one of the first, iPhone thingies, which I got from my boss back then. It must have been one of the first ones in Switzerland because he bought it in Boston. And this is by no means to say that I'm super technically savvy. But the one thing I was really impressed with is the telephone kind of photograph apparatus. And I was trying that. And I don't know, a couple of weeks ago, I was looking back at those photos and the quality was really bad. But when you think about what we're having today in our cameras, in our photographs, they're really good. And this is what comes down here. The lifespan has become really short, and really in less than a few years, basically the camera industry has been reduced down to those who are really using it like professional photographers. Everybody else is mostly using their cell phone. And here's one more element which is very important for legal, because all of those things I've been talking about, they were basically in the pure technology space. Now, what we are doing and the world we are working with and in legal, I don't believe that technology as such, well, maybe in the not so regulated part, but in the core legal part will be important, but it won't be that important. And why is that? Legal is a regulated industry. And in a regulated industry, it's regulation protecting the incumbents. You can have the best computer out there, but if you got to go to court, you got to be admitted to go to that court. And computer doesn't have that right now. There's other examples for divorces in the US. I mean, right now it's whatever it is, but the moment you take away kind of the rules, basically it's other players coming into that sphere, and there's a very high likelihood that people may take that away. Another example, maybe to make it kind of really visible for you, is Switzerland is one of the most important markets in the world for the distribution of funds. But when you look at the Swiss fund industry, you realize it's rather small. And when you look into the fund market, I think the last number I've seen was around 86% or so of products being offered in Switzerland, and they were not from Switzerland. So not only have we lost the market, but we've lost even our home market. And obviously the question is, how can that happen? How can that be? Because Switzerland is such an important country. Well, not in the global sense, but in the financial sense at the very least. And the reason, the trigger for all of that is, again, regulation. There may be almost no difference between a Swiss Securities Fund and the Luxembourg UCITS Fund or AFMD Fund, if you like, because indeed most of the rules have been implemented into Swiss law. But truth is, it doesn't carry that label of UCITS or AFMD. And in that sense, that is a regulation you cannot overcome. I'm not talking about tax aspects, which are also obviously very relevant here, but it was just so much easier for a lot of our players to also go to Luxembourg, set up shop there, and basically re-import the product. So what we are left with in Switzerland is basically what we need for our own really true domestic market, which is not very huge. So in that sense, that is kind of how I foresee what will be happening in Switzerland. It's a combination of new technology initiatives plus regulation coming together, because we are talking about a regulated industry. So technology disruption, what's out there, what's coming? And this is a slide I like quite a lot. Not that I understand it really, but nevertheless, it's kind of keeping me going to where I found this one. And that's the webpage of Singularity University in California. And they're putting out great reports on those exponential technologies. Obviously, they're not the only ones. Don't want to put them up somewhere there, but they're really good at it. And if I can kind of give you a little tip, if you don't know it, obviously, just do as I do. Like once a month, go on the webpage, read one of those reports, and be inspired by what's going on there. And kind of everything from 3D printing via blockchain, obviously super important in Switzerland, all the way to the right. That's what's out there. And the really important part is the combination of those technologies will come together, and who together will be taking us somewhere where we have no real idea what it actually can be, but we kind of have the feeling it's going to be something amazing. Would love to talk about that, but it's really just to show you what's out there and where you can start to think about what does that mean for legal? What does artificial intelligence, not just the machine learning we're seeing today, coupled with blockchain or coupled with advanced materials or whatever, mean in the legal context? And there's a lot of questions around it if you think about it, but just for your kind of thought. So everybody's always kind of asking me when is what happening, and when will any one of those ideas, any one of those technologies be reaching kind of the disruption point. Now, the honest answer is obviously I have no idea. Otherwise, I wouldn't be sitting here. Otherwise, I would be investing. But I found this slide from California as well, which kind of gives a rough idea when what is happening. And again, here we are not talking about how A is moving to B, but how we're really talking about disruption where everybody is using it. And truth being told, I mean, I have to kind of assume that we are still a bit the freaks here in legal tech, and it's really great to see the numbers of everybody joining. But when I look at the numbers of the lawyers in Switzerland, obviously that's a huge number, and most don't like the idea. People will adopt technology mostly when it's hidden so far in an application that you don't even know it's there, right? So that's kind of what we're talking about here. So for blockchain, for example, it probably gives you something like 5 years from now. And that may sound like, whoa, that's a long time, but no, it's not. When you think that a lot of other things, we'll be talking about that in a minute, have taken decades to get anywhere. I mean, the white paper for the cryptocurrency for Bitcoin, that's just a bit more than 10 years old, right? And within that time frame, a lot has happened. And that's just the cryptocurrency part of the blockchain technology. A lot of other things are shown on that slide here as well. You probably know this slide, and you probably even shared it on social media. I clearly did. And then I was like, that's a little strange, because it says it took 75 years for the telephone to reach 50 million users, and a certain app down there took 35 days to reach the same number of players. And then you realize, when this started at the very beginning of the 20th century, I'm not sure there was 50 million people already living there. But no, the difference obviously is that, yes, a telephone for everybody in their home. You can't just put the telephone there. You need to build all and everything around it. Whereas for an app, obviously, you're just piggybacking on the telephone. So yes, statistically, it's probably wrong. But what's true is the one thing it's saying, and that is that the acceleration of technology progress and uptake is taking place around us. So what does that mean? This is another quite important slide, I believe, from our colleagues from Accenture, if I'm not mistaken. I took it from Harvard Business Review. And with this slide from the very beginning, with the bell curve of adoption, I believe this is what we're seeing today. This bell curve of adoption is being brought together. So rather than going from innovators, early adopters, early maturity, late maturity to laggards, we're basically going from trial users to vast maturity. And that's very difficult for me to understand because I'm a guy who spent like a year deciding which watch to buy and, you know, going around looking at it, thinking about it. But when I look at my son, who's 11 years old now, and what he's doing is, you know, he's basically got an iPad, and he goes to school and comes home and says, "Daddy, can I have that whatever app?" And obviously I need to authorize it to do that. And he downloads it. And within 1 week, basically all the kids from not even his class, but the entire school has it. And within 2 weeks, it's probably gone. So that's the new reality we're up against. And I believe that is also what will be happening to some degree in the legal tech space, because it's a new reality that's out there. So legal tech, what are the key drivers and what's the barriers? And I kind of put it into the good old systematic by Professor Goodenough, which you will probably know. And just to remind ourselves, and I don't want you to read all of that, but obviously if you're studying and you can have the slides, I guess, in the evening, just go through it. But essentially, when we talk about legal tech, he suggested 3 kind of buckets. The first one was systems to help with office management. Second one was automation of work. And then on the right side, if you like, there was like the real legal tech kind of applications. I think the systems to help with office management, nobody has really thought about much. It's just when it's there, it's being adopted. This is like getting the e-billing systems up and running and getting that automated, all the writing tools and all of that, everything basically that goes into the back office. That's rather easy. And interestingly, a lot of what is legal tech today is in that space, and that's being adopted. It's just probably not noted as much because it's not that greatly important. Automation of work, that's kind of like halfway. This is where lawyers are starting to get sometimes a little edgy because yes, it's good to save time and improve quality, but at the end of the day, we're still billing hours, aren't we, right? It's kind of a B2C market kind of reality we're seeing there. And as the paper world where we are coming from is gradually being replaced. The real legal tech on the right side, I think that is the interesting part, because that is where the fights are starting and where the fights are out there. And it's quite interesting to see it. So again, just to give you 1 or 2 examples, artificial intelligence, machine learning, online dispute resolution, that may sound like something great out there. But essentially, if you look behind what's really behind it going on technically, it's not that new. It's just new for the legal sphere. Now, is this being adopted because the lawyers want it? Nah, not so sure, really. I mean, we are obviously doing as a firm a lot in that space with due diligence for M&A mandates and so forth. And truth being told, the technology we're using there, we've had it for 6-7 years already in our forensic team. And you know, when we started to look at it, we were like, "Oh, we got it, nice, let's bring it over." But that's the stage when we did it. We still were the first ones in Switzerland. By no means trying to say that we're amazing, right? But this was just to show you how we kind of brought it into the firm and adopted it. So where are we with legal tech? Here is my kind of guess on the left side of this slide, where it's probably somewhere between where we should be at some point. But the interesting part really is on the right slide. And when you think about what does really trigger the adoption of that, to be honest, in most instances, it's clients. And we sometimes try to do a little something like partner wine. Again, no kind of advertisement for it, but just for semantic purposes. And when we and another law firm from Zurich did that, it was great. It felt great and all of that. And I can tell you a little bit about the history to that. But it's taken years now for other law firms to jump onto that as well. And it's such a clear-cut case. But again, if the clients don't want that, that's not what you're doing. Now, I believe that in particular the COVID crisis right now, which we see increasing pressure on GCs left, right, and center, that will do the trick of move everything forward. But on the other hand, it will also do the trick of basically making a lot of the legal tech players kind of, they're either being bought by big tech, or there will be big companies kind of coming up who will take them over. So what is really driving most of that, kind of beyond the client's part, I think it's really people, right? It's more younger people coming to the point where they can push the button on the yes buy, on the yes we want it. And I had a discussion with a GC of a bank recently, and he looked at me and he said, look, I need to bring down the cost for my legal department by 50%, 50, like 50. And I was like, whoa, I mean, you're not super efficient, but you're definitely not that bad. And he said, yeah, but in this day and age, that's what I'm getting in terms of numbers from the top. And so the next question he had to me was like, what technology do you have? And I was kind of, bringing out some of the ideas we were having. So again, here's some ideas about the people. And I don't know, since I don't see your photo, but I guess you're a little bit younger. So you're kind of that generation. And some of the things we're putting there, you're like, yeah, that's clear. Well, trust me, it's not that clear for people who are 40 or 50 or 60. So what are the key drivers for legal tech adoption? And I think you have to differentiate like what is in the media, in particular in the legal tech media, and what's reality, right? And again, I'm not saying that this is like super to the point, but I believe that there is a lot of value still in there. And yes, we can discuss whether the one should be left or right to center, but eventually it's probably that. And in terms of what real pressure is, where it's really coming from, which is really leading to legal tech innovation, I think it's client pressure. It's not the lack of lawyers, which is there, which is getting into a problem, because yes, a lot of people today don't want to be lawyers anymore. They want to do something with a purpose, with whatever, and yes, agility and all of those things, but really it's client pressure. Hype and publicity, we shouldn't underestimate them. They are quite big, but they are not like the most important thing. Competitive pressure, yes, it is, and it will be even more so tomorrow, I guess. The other things in their legacy system, regulatory drivers and so forth, obviously play their part. Interestingly, when you look at what are the barriers for legal tech adoption, and I looked into our, well, basically behind our own kind of secret compartments, what is really blocking the adoption of legal tech adoption. And there's a couple of areas, if you like, with legacy systems and technology barriers and so forth. But what's really, really blocking it right now in my book is the billable hour model, right? Partnership model, definitely. And that's like the two major ones. And everything else that comes down there is kind of a little back. And what do I mean with that? Why is the partnership model, and I don't want to slander that, don't get me wrong, right? But why is the partnership model kind of hindrance in all of that? Well, if you think about it, usually with law firms, the biggest part of equity is controlled by some of the oldest partners. And they are not thinking about the technology and the legacy they can leave behind for the next generation, taking over the firm. They're probably more thinking about whatever it may be, right? The new ranch or golf course where they're going to spend their well-earned retirement. So that is a problem. And the set billable hours model, as long as you can bill, that's what you do. And then there's the other things like longer cycles of sales cycle and security concerns and so forth. So what are the options for law firms who want to remain profitable? This is not 100% new, but I didn't find a new one. But my guess is also talking with some friends in the US, and it's mostly US numbers, that demand for legal services is flat. Obviously, again, now we don't have numbers from what COVID is doing, but again, this and my feeling out there, and I'm obviously taking all kinds of notes that tell me that I'm wrong, but otherwise I don't believe it. So for the time being, let's just assume it's true, is if you take out the top notch of the top 20 law firms at the bottom, that is what most law firms are kind of facing. It's really flat. And the collection rates are going down, right? Again, here you see it. It's going down, down, down every year. And the leverage is decreasing. When you look at the people that are being staffed, and again, it's US numbers, but obviously Switzerland does have kind of a similar but yet still different law firm DNA than New York. But there's comparatives going on, then kind of the same thing. Leverage is decreasing. We're really going up, as you see in the middle with the, I believe it's silver kind of number, which is the really senior people who are not yet partner. And the partners, they are going down a bit, but not as much. Whereas the rest, and that's where you really make the money, is going down, down, down. So what does it mean? Legal tech is at the market, like it or not. You can decrease it, you can like it, you can not like it. But here I just picked some examples of what's out there. And what it's really doing is increasing the price pressure, right? Partner wine is the one I've been noting before. I mean, you can get a company not for 5,000 Swiss francs out there, but for a lot less. And I'm not even talking about the 99 or whatever it was Swiss francs for an NDA, which is kind of fair, probably, as you would say. And there's other examples obviously listed there as well. What it also does is this technology helps with the industrialization of the artisan. And if you kind of look at the traditional model, which is kind of in the middle, and I put Big Four into law firms here because there is a lot of similarity, let's be honest, right? Also, we have a bit more technology thanks to being kind of on the back burner of the big firm. But that's kind of what was it, right? And when you look to the right of all of that, then I think this is where we are going. I don't know if it's going to be 3 years or 5 years, but it's not going to be 10 years in my book. And what it really means is that the participation in the market is really going down for law firms and Big Four, if you want. People will always want law firms. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying law firms are going away, but you have to be very, very clear about what it is you want. Just by putting out kind of banana services, that's just not going to cut it anymore. Or the price pressure is really going to drive it down because you will be competing with internal legal departments, which are going to get bigger itself. And then there's new players coming to the market, providing services in areas that are not protected by technology, that are not protected by regulation in that sense. So again, I'm not going through the finest details of this slide, but it shows you how you go from artisanal to industrial to eventually at some point digital. Now again, don't get me wrong, a real attorney, that is somebody who will not go away. That is that person where the hourly rate doesn't matter, right? That's where essentially you want to have that hand on your shoulder telling you it's going to be all right, and he's going to take away that court case you're up against these days. But you also have to ask yourself, are you one of them, right? Do you want to be one of them? And how many of those can be there? So for all of the rest, I believe that digital is going to be very interesting, right? And we see that today. I mean, when I started to work, I was put on M&A mandates, right? And I still remember those days down there in the graveyard with no light coming in from the outside, going through, well, what must have felt like thousands of license agreements or whatever it was, and kind of making notes. I don't believe that this will be the future. This will be done by technology. And to be honest, I don't think I've ever written in my life a whole contract. Because when I graduated, there was those books, where you had a CD at the time. You remember CD? And then where you had the template on it. And yes, I've done a lot of working around with that, but I haven't done a really contract from A to Z from scratch. And I don't know how you feel about that, but I would be very surprised if you would have done the same thing. So where are we going? This is a slide from BCG, I believe, and which kind of sums it up for me. We're going from from pyramids to rockets, as they call it, and it's kind of where we are getting it, right? It's, yes, there's the core players, and they're playing with different kind of providers of services. And what it means is that for future services, you need to be able to integrate technology. Do you do that yourself? I don't know. You better do, right? But it means you have to have a new skill set out there, because yes, the universities are picking up and there is a lot of new stuff coming in there, but like really technology management, not so sure. So what are the key action points in this space? I think first of all, you just need to be watching the legal tech market. I'm not saying get in there, invest fully, and especially not in Switzerland. We have to be honest, Switzerland is a very rich country. It's not first in the market to move, but you really got to study the market that is going out there to really decide and make your bet when and where to move. Your business model, I think it's something you need to redefine. And we're just starting for ourselves now to again do it, because the last time was 3 years ago. Do I believe 3 years is a good time for a business model today? I don't think so. You probably have to do it on a half-yearly basis or at least on a yearly basis, right? And you really got to be sure about what is your value proposition and what is your operating model. And then you need to think about the impact on the individual roles. There will be less support staff needed in the classical sphere. So you got to make sure that you open up a way for them to get into the future, which will probably mean technology. So here's another great slide, which I've stolen from Global Legal Chronicle, but I really like it. And I mean, obviously there's 1,000 ways out there of how you look at that, how you should do that. But this is ABCDE. It's just perfect for lawyers, isn't it? And I think it's like really kind of think about it, bringing it down to the point. And basically what it means is you got to assess the state of the legal market and what will be the marketplace of the future. It sounds really easy, but it's not. It's not. And again, just to give you a feeling of where we're coming from, when we were building out PwC Legal, and then we're still doing that, then the question is, who are we? Who do we want to be? Do we want to compete with the top 5 in Switzerland? The answer is no. We create our own sphere, right? We have things that they can't do because we have those cross-loss kind of possibilities and technology which we're using. So we kind of, obviously we're competing in some areas, but essentially we created our new space. And I'm not saying we're super good at it, but it means this kind of thinking has happened. B, build a vision of the firm's business and its plan for action and really follow through on it. Now that sounds easy, but to be honest, I can't remember any time at university, leaving aside the MBA, which I did later, in my law studies where this was a big thing. So you need to see a culture around all of that. And then D, design and create innovation. Now that sounds like, yeah, we do that, but that's not why we became lawyers. Seriously, when the time was there to go to university all those years ago for me, I wanted to be a lawyer, to drive a nice car and have a really nice suit. Right? I'm basically a Gordon Gekko generation, if you want. But first of all, I don't think that this is what most people today kind of think and feel like, and it's also kind of what gets them on if you talk to those new kids coming out of university right now. And finally, E, execute on the plan. I know it sounds really, really simple, but it's not. It's absolutely not if you do it right. So with that, I hope I gave you some interesting ideas. Please hit me over the head for nonsense I may have said. And here is the new book, by the way, which we did last year, New Suits. There's more than 40 authors from around the world who put their thought on where the legal world as such is going into this book. It's out there on, I believe, the shelf, I hope still. But we also did videos around a lot of the things I've just been talking about, really talking about those models. It's on Appetite for Disruption.tv, not right now because we are recutting them, but in the next couple of weeks. So do make sure if you're interested in that kind of material to subscribe to the YouTube channel. And here are all my contact details. Please feel free to connect with me. I'll be very happy to accept you, obviously, on LinkedIn and even my private Telegram. Yes, but it's private, but I will accept you if you say you're from today's event, if you're interested in seeing a little bit of what's going on out there. But no, the real reason I'm putting it out there is if you're getting into this, it's a theme I've been dabbling around for 10 years and where I've been really working around it for 5 years. So I have a lot of slides, a lot of material. So if there's something you need, just let me know. Send me an email. If I have it, I will send it through to you. If not, I will let you know, or at least I will point you to where you can find it. Most importantly, it's amazing times. So despite the little thing that is going on out there, I believe we've had very rarely ever in our kind of history such a great opportunity to do stuff globally in disconnected networks. And so I would say, don't get too hung up on the COVID thing. Also be careful, please, and do great things. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Guenther. It was a fantastic presentation. We do have quite a few questions. I hope you still have a bit of energy and creative thoughts. So if ever you have other questions, you can still ask them in private or in public on the chat. So feel free if we have time. Guenther, you tell us when you need to leave, of course. Otherwise, I guess we can keep you for a while. So the first question I would have is, so should students do internships in legal tech companies just so they can get used to this new normal you've been talking about?
Absolutely, yes. In fact, you should probably even work in a legal tech for the first year of your career and then decide where you want to go, especially if you're really into legal tech. But yes, by all means, do work there.
Then what are the practical consequences of missing the train of change? So let's assume you're a law firm and, well, you don't really see the effects. And I mean, we've all spoken to lawyers. They don't really see today the effects. So what happens if you just let the train go by? What does it look like?
Well, the train goes by, right? I mean, again, we have to differentiate between the lawyers who are lawyers, right? In the courtroom with you, defending you against death row, not in Switzerland, but you kind of get the idea, right? Or getting you that divorce, shall we say. But if you're not there, if you really miss the train, I think you've missed the train. And if you're seeing the backlights and you're chasing them, it will be a difficult one. Again, I'm not saying that you should go all in right now, but you kind of should really try to stay at least not ahead, but at least on par.
It looks like this requires good management, change management skills. And typically you wouldn't have a change management person in a law firm, in my experience at least. How should you go about that? Because, I mean, there's change, you have a lot of forces against it in a traditional structure and not much in favor of it. So how would you have any tips on how to go about that?
Well, I think you definitely, you remember my chart with the pyramid and the rocket, where you see the new kind of talents needed. And I think who has that talent at hand will win, right? I mean, it doesn't have to be the law firm. Yes, I agree. But I mean, let's be honest, right? I think we are pretty cool as lawyers, right? So we shouldn't let that pass. And, Chris, for example, is a legal tech officer at KC and so forth. So I think this knowledge is around. The question is who manages to get it into his firm.
There's another question that says, how should you decide which technologies or business models to adopt? What do you look at to choose?
It's super difficult, huh? I mean, I'm not saying we're doing everything perfect, really not. I mean, it requires technical understanding and sophistication, which makes everything very, very difficult. But I believe once it's reached a point where you can see how people are working with it, you can really start to kind of question it and check it. What do I mean by that? Take tools that are checking documents for you. Now there's all the big names out there, but that doesn't help you if you're in Switzerland, and it doesn't help you if you're in Geneva, where everything is French. Then you need to check which of those things works with French contracts and not with German contracts, and so forth. So you really need to get behind what it's doing and really try it out at the end of the day.
What would the future look like in 5 years for a law student who's finishing today?
That's a good question, but I believe that the next 5 years will probably bring about change like the last 20. So it will be quite different.
should law firms change from an organizational and structural perspective, like organize more like regular businesses, would you say?
Honest answer is I don't know. I have a feeling, but I have to be very careful about that because it doesn't sing to the praise of PwC or any of those firms really. But deep down in my heart, I believe that organizations as such will go away. That it's more kind of platforms that will be provided by tech companies rather than those big companies that are running it today, and people will be focusing more on the application using those technologies. But that's just from very deep down in my heart and from the back of my mind. So the honest answer is I don't know.
So we had another question. Another person wanted to know, you mentioned a story about a GC coming to you for a 50% reduction in costs. Was that a success story in the end?
It's just starting. That was really a couple of weeks ago. So they're just starting with that. I hope it will be a success. We're trying some things because now he has also some people available from his internal team whom we put on that. So I hope it will be.
Do you think innovation comes from the private sector? Do you think innovation from the private sector, so law firms and others in legal tech, can push innovation in the public sector? And maybe how do you see this process happening?
Interestingly, also the public sector is doing a lot. I mean, maybe not so much in Switzerland and not on the face of it, but in some countries it is. But leaving that aside, indeed, it's currently more the private sector leading everything. Because that is where the money is. This is where the action is, right? But I don't have a global view on that, obviously. It's just my gut feeling.
What would be needed to become a modern digitized player with a state-of-the-art legal services offer and compete with actual legal tech providers as a big law firm?
I'm not so sure if the competing is so important in the future. I think those things will be gravitating. There will be players who are more on the tech side, and they will be offering it to anybody. So I think it will be a more commingled network where people will be using it. You're not thinking about once you start your IBM or Microsoft or whatever program in your law firm, what the other law firm is doing with that or not. So the moment it's kind of perceived as technology, I think that will be a lot easier.
And perhaps one last question. In the law students training, you typically only have law. And perhaps training to public speech training. So what would be the fundamental bricks that would need to be added to that training so that they're better equipped?
I have to be very careful. By the way, all I'm saying is my own view, but I have to be very careful with what I'm saying here. And basically, I'm giving you what I've been telling my son a couple of days ago when he came to me, and he's 11, as said, right? So he's not really into the matter yet, but he was like, what should I study? And should I study law? And I said, no, because if you really think about it, you're spending 4 or 5 years of your life to study something that you can practice in a country. And once you leave that country, you can throw it away. I rather go for business or whatever. But truth is, I believe for the future jobs of people going to university, not today, but tomorrow, I think the jobs have not even been invented. But that being said, try to go left and right as much as you can, even if it costs you a year or two, really just so you open up your landscape of what's going on out there. And I'm not a techie guy. I just like technology, but half of the time I have no idea what it is. But just this liking of technology at least opens my eyes for what's going on out there and gives me some ideas of where I want to go, where I don't want to go. So if you can do languages, by all means do them. I would give my left arm if I could speak another language like really well, right? If I could talk to you in French rather than in my, well, let's not go into my French, right? Try to think about technology. If you get a chance, I'm not talking about being a super programmer or anything like that, but really just try to work with that technology, with that computer, rather than just with the classical lawyer programs. So do as much as you can, left, right, and center.
Which countries are on top when it comes to legal tech? Is it necessary as a Swiss lawyer to check the technical developments abroad?
Yeah. Switzerland is comparatively good at legal tech, but let's be very honest, most of the really good stuff comes from the US. Now, obviously, they have a totally different legal system, so you can't mirror probably 90% one-to-one, but those things start there and then they're being adapted. But in our closer region, I would definitely look to Germany, which is very closely related, France as well. So there's stuff going on, but don't forget to look into the US and Asia.
Thank you very much. So that's all the questions we received for the moment. Is there anyone that still has a question that wants to ask it on the chat? Well, there is a congratulation message for you, Guenther. So congratulations for the amazing presentation. I would like him to take a brief view on change of regulations of the legal profession.
Yeah. I don't know if you read my book, but I'm talking about it in, it's still closed anyway, but it's like chapter 12, and I'm talking about that kind of as a warning, by saying the moment you take that element away and nobody says you can't take away, this changes everything for everybody. And we kind of grew up with that kind of, okay, you become a lawyer, you do take a bar exam, etc., and then you're protected for the rest of your life, but it may go away. It's a privilege that is given to us. And by the way, the ideas we have about the big law firms and so forth, that's pretty new as well. That started in the 70s maybe, or 60s in the US, but that's when they were really starting to bloom up. Before that, there was just small little law firms. So again, we could go this way, it could be totally abolished. I don't know. So yes, you gotta watch the regulation of it. But in Switzerland, I mean, it's not that kind of urgent.
All right. So I think this closes it. So I'll hand over to Chris for the closing words. Wait, we just have a last one. Should we take it? Yes, sure. Yes, we'll take the last one. So do you expect that technology will affect codes of ethics, advertising of services, or limits that services are provided by the computer?
Honest answer is I don't know, but I fear it may be the case. Now the question is, what is the future and when will that be? Probably here around, not in the next 5 years, but the question will come.
All right, so I'm handing over to Chris. Thank you very much, Guenther. That was really, really good. Thank you so much. Chris, thank you.
Thank you, Nicola. Thank you, Guenther, very much for this very valuable and interesting insight into legal technology with a focus on innovation curve, digital evolution, digital disruption. And thank you to the audience for these questions. Before we close, I want to provide you with some further information. Please join our LinkedIn Legal Innovation 2020 discussion and networking group, which we have set up in order to announce the new recordings and to discuss content. Soon we will make available some LI recordings, such as Legal Education in a Transformative World by Professor Philipp Giron, Live Prediction der Urteile des Bundesgerichts mit künstlicher Intelligenz by Ludwig Bull, Relevance of the Human Factor in a Digital World by Professor Bruno Mascello, and Digital Strategy by Professor Rolf H. Weber. Our next event will be the SLTA Breakfast Talk on Tuesday, 3rd of November, taking place at a new place at the Café Oscar at Zurich Main Station, not the Springly. You can register directly on the SLTA website. With that, I would like to close. Thank you very much for your interest and for your participation. I wish you a nice rest of the day. Take care and see you soon.